What's good? It's Woog. We have Emanuel Navarrete, 38 wins and 1 loss, defending his WBO 130-pound title against Robson Conceicao, 17 wins and 2 losses. Pardon me, I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold, so we're going to work through this. And I have long seen Emanuel Navarrete as being one of the funnest must-watch fighters in the sport, pretty much ever since his back-to-back fights against Isaac Dogboe, who at the time was making a lot of noise as a 122-pound champion. When he got in the ring with Navarrete, it became clear in the middle rounds, because you always hear the shift in commentary from when they see the A-side fighter, who again at the time was Isaac Dogboe, going into their first fight. You quickly hear the narrative start to change as they see this kind of undeniable talent where, you see the 6 to 8 punch combinations that Navarrete is coming in with. You see how long his arms are, especially for the 122-pound division. Navarrete has a 72-inch reach. Think about that. At 122, he had the same reach that Errol Spence has at 147. So you started to see that Isaac Dogboe had his hands full, because this guy just had an avalanche of activity, and it seemed to pick up as the fight went on. Well, he would go on to win that fight against Isaac Dogboe via unanimous decision. By the end of that fight, Dogboe was holding on for dear life, just trying to survive that damn thing. I mean, it looked like a total nightmare for Dogboe when he fought Navarrete. And then in the rematch, it was arguably an even bigger beating, plus there was a 12th round stoppage. So Isaac Dogboe had to endure a 12-round thrashing just to get stopped before you can even say that you went the distance with the guy the second time. So that's 24 rounds that Dogboe had to endure against Navarrete. And at the time, I was wondering if Isaac Dogboe was going to be able to continue his career at an elite level, given what he suffered against Navarrete. But Navarrete, true to form, would defend his title 4 more times successfully, and then he would go up to 126 featherweight, win the WBO belt there in his second fight at 126 against Ruben Villa, defended it successfully a couple times against Christopher Diaz, Joet Gonzalez. Now, that Joet Gonzalez fight, Navarrete took a lot more punches. I mean, he still won via wide unanimous decision, but Joet Gonzalez was very game, and as much punishment as Joet Gonzalez absorbed in that fight, Navarrete took his fair share as well. But it was pretty much true to his mantra with that snowball of activity where it picks up as the fight continues. So Navarrete would defend the belt 1 more time after that Joet Gonzalez fight, making it 3 title defenses at 126. Now, that last title defense against Eduardo Baez, that was a fight where you looked at Navarrete and you started seeing that he didn't have the same skinny build that he had at 122 or even in his first few fights at 126. And you could look at Eduardo Baez's style and see that he was pretty good in that boxing wise, and with his ability to both counter and to pursue. I thought that maybe Navarrete would have some trouble early against Baez, and Baez did outperform Navarrete in those first few rounds. I was wondering, damn, is this about to be an upset stoppage for Eduardo Baez? Well, Navarrete ended up sinking Eduardo Baez with the body shot, and that sealed the deal. 6-round knockout for Navarrete, even though I was kind of saying, damn, it really had me wondering how sustainable his fight style would be, especially if he wasn't going to be staying at 126. So then he goes to 130, fights Liam Wilson, who was training with some very good fighters out in DC and was under very good tutelage. Liam Wilson came into that Navarrete fight very prepared, and he dropped Navarrete badly. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is it. This is Navarrete's style coming back to haunt him. Like, it was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And I thought that was about to happen at the hands of Liam Wilson, especially after the way that Navarrete got dropped by Wilson. I mean, he got dropped, he rolled over, and he was still super woozy when he got back to his feet. Took several more meaningful punches before he slowly turned the tide, pretty much just put his foot on the gas and did what Emanuel Navarrete is known to do, and that is just to come forward and throw 6 to 8 punch combinations from all kinds of angles, moving consistently, just a nonstop, and I like to use this phrase, treadmill from hell, that he likes to put his opponent on, where he just overwhelms them with his activity, volume, power, angles, just, cardio. And let's not forget his unbelievable chin that he showed in his next fight against Oscar Valdez. Well, Navarrete stopped Liam Wilson in the 9th round. He knocked him out. So that was almost like a whew. But it had me wondering even more and questioning how viable Navarrete was going to be at 130, because a lot of those physical attributes that would work to his advantage at 122 and at 126, they were no longer as pronounced at 130. We're talking everything from the 5'7" in height, the 72-inch reach. I mean, the cardio and everything was still going to stand out, but you wonder, as Navarrete starts to look a little bit flabbier around the belly area. Yeah, and I don't mean that he was like obese or anything. I just mean he didn't look as tightly wound as he did in the lower divisions, which sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing. I thought that in the style of Navarrete, it would come back to haunt him, because he would be getting hit to the body. He would be met with equal strength and power from his opponents, size, strength, and power from his opponents at 130. So I actually thought that there was a good chance that Oscar Valdez could beat Navarrete, especially, we saw the way that Burchell ran into Valdez's power and got his lights put out. Well, having seen what we saw from Navarrete against Liam Wilson and seeing the skill set that Oscar Valdez brings to the table, I thought that this might be a bad matchup for Navarrete and that he would finally get his here. Well, man, from the first round on, Navarrete put his foot on the gas, kept his foot on the gas, threw like 100+ punches in several rounds. He came back from his worst round where he visibly had a hurt hand that he kept on communicating to the corner. His hand was badly hurt. And then he comes out like in the next round, a crucial round, because in the middle rounds, Oscar Valdez started turning the tide. Well, Navarrete threw like nearly 120 punches in that critical next round. And again, you're watching this fight, you're seeing some of the punches Navarrete is taking, and you're looking at his style of volume, and you're just wondering, how is this possible? And then the way that he comes out of the fight, you look at Oscar Valdez's face, and he looks like he's been through the meat grinder. You look at Navarrete's face, and he looks like he's ready to go out at night. You know what I mean? Like, there was not a scratch on him, which, that changes as you age as well. When you start getting, early mid-30s, you start seeing the visible wear more after some of these fights. So at least in this stage of Emanuel Navarrete's career, this guy is an outlier. This guy is an anomaly. He plays by his own set of rules fundamentally. And he's getting away with it. He is able to do things that other fighters simply cannot do. And now he's going to be fighting Robson Conceicao, who most of us, saw, rise to prominence. Maybe rise to prominence isn't the word, but after becoming a Olympic gold medalist, like Conceicao won the 2016 gold while the Olympics were taking place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Conceicao is a Brazilian fighter, so think about what a momentous occasion that was, right? But we saw him fight Oscar Valdez when Oscar Valdez tested positive for PEDs, and they still not only let Valdez keep his belt, but they let the fight continue. They let the fight go on as scheduled, even though he tested positive, which, that was egregious in my view. But Conceicao outboxed Valdez clearly in the first half of the fight, at least the, majority of the first several rounds. He became less active, he being Conceicao, less active in the second half of the fight, pretty much let Valdez back in the fight. Valdez started pressuring, started catching up to Conceicao a bit more, and Conceicao wasn't standing his ground as much. So Valdez ended up winning a unanimous, pretty controversial at the time. A lot of people thought that Conceicao won the fight, but Valdez was awarded a unanimous decision win there. So Conceicao wins his next fight via unanimous decision against Javier Martinez. Wasn't an easy fight, and neither was his fight a few fights before Valdez against Luis Correa. Go watch that fight. Conceicao really had to dig deep, but it was his next fight where he would fight Shakur Stevenson. That's where Shakur Stevenson lost his 2 titles on the scale, and Conceicao, he lost the vast majority of the rounds, but he was competitive in the sense that it didn't look like Stevenson was close to finishing the fight. Like Conceicao you could say that he survived the fight without too much of a scare, right? So Conceicao's had one fight since that wide decision loss against Stevenson, and it was against Nicholas Polanco, and that fight unfortunately was a no contest because there was a head clash in the second round and Polanco could not continue the fight. So as I'm sizing up Emanuel Navarrete versus Robson Conceicao, Conceicao is a bit of a sweet scientist. He's a very good technical fighter, good counterpuncher, decent strength, not a lot of power. Out of his 17 wins, 8 have come via knockout, whereas Navarrete, who doesn't have one punch knockout power, I mean, even though he did stop Eduardo Baez with a punch to the body, one punch pretty much, but out of his 38 wins, 31 have come via knockout. But style-wise, for me, this one isn't a difficult one, and it comes down to one element of the fight specifically. I often see fighters who are movers and who are, negative style fighters, where it's to take a step back, counter, jab, jab, move, counter. Sweet scientists who, show a good amount of movement and control range and play that style of game. I usually look at those guys when they face pressure fighters, which, Navarrete he jumps off the page as a pressure fighter. Like, pressure fighter doesn't do his style justice. There are pressure fighters, and then there's Emanuel Navarrete. And he does have deceptively, I wouldn't say, it's not like move your head and, just dodge punches in that kind of way, style of defense. But Navarrete, for all the running red lights, as online boxing analyst Richard Dwyer likes to say, running red lights, Navarrete, you would think that he would have had his lights put out by now. But he does different things by picking different angles, and he does change levels to a degree, and it's constant movement. So he's always a moving target. He's not just coming one direction towards you in a straight line and backing up in a straight line. No, he's always sidestepping. His feet often get crossed, which isn't fundamentally sound either. But again, he gets away with it. He's got his own style of footwork where he's working different angles. And yes, maybe if you catch him halfway between steps or something, maybe you could drop him because of he's off balanced or something like that, but you don't see a lot of that. Well, in this sweet scientist versus pressure fighter style, I often think that the guy who's moving and jabbing, at some point, he's going to have to stand his ground, because you can only move around and jab so much before the guy starts getting close to you and you start fatiguing naturally. Like, even the best of movers start to fatigue. So once you become less elusive, are you going to start to be able to back up the pressure fighter? Are you going to be able to stay put and be able to fortify your positioning where you're not getting moved back and back into the ropes and back into corners and getting beat on and advanced on and pursued effectively? Like, if you look at Roman Villa, Rashidi Ellis wasn't able to stand his ground enough in the late rounds and ended up getting dropped, ended up losing a close, somewhat, you could argue, controversial decision. It was close, but lost the decision because he wasn't able to fortify his positioning and truly stand his ground. He ended up back with his back against the ropes too much, got beat on. Boots Ennis, on the other hand, was able to stand his ground and be able to push the pressure fighter back. Will Conceicao be able to push Navarrete back once he becomes less elusive? Because, I could see Conceicao winning like maybe 2 out of the first 3 rounds, or something like that, maybe 2 or 3 out of the first 5, even if Conceicao's really on his game. But after that point, there comes a time when Navarrete's style is just going to overwhelm you, and you are not going to be able to keep on moving. Your legs start to get tired. Your back starts to get tired. Conceicao's not even a young fighter anymore. He's 35 years old. So even if he experiences early round success, I think that he's going to tire and become more stationary, and he's either going to push Navarrete back or he's going to get beat on and worked over. To me, it's evident. Like, I feel like I know how this one is going to play out. Now, if Conceicao is able to have his moments and truly hurt Navarrete or push him back or maybe even drop Navarrete, hey, props to Conceicao. You know what I mean? I just think that the most likely scenario here is that Navarrete, even if he does have a little difficulty, finding Conceicao in the first couple rounds or something, is going to be able to work him over, is going to be able to do Navarrete-like things to him. And it becomes a question of, can Conceicao survive the onslaught, the continued assault? Will Conceicao be able to persevere through that at 35 years old? You know, he did, again, survive pretty well against Shakur Stevenson, and he was able to do the same against Oscar Valdez. You know what? I was, kind of thinking that, and again, Conceicao is a very good technical fighter, accurate puncher. So maybe he does catch Navarrete, and that does buy him time if he's got Navarrete having to figure some things out. I've just seen Navarrete put his foot on the gas, and if I don't think this is the fight where it truly catches up with Navarrete. Not yet. Not in this one. I think that Navarrete beats on him, but does he stop him? 35 years old. Navarrete's relentless pace. Conceicao is a really good fighter who can dig deep. Again, watch that fight against Luis Correa. But yeah, I'm this close to taking Navarrete via stoppage, becoming the first to stop Conceicao. But I'm still going to give the veteran the benefit of the doubt here. I'm going to say Conceicao survives this 12-round affair against Navarrete, and it goes the distance. Yeah, I'm going to take Navarrete via unanimous decision. Maybe it looks a little bit more like his fight against Ruben Villa, just in terms of Villa's ability to go the 12-round distance. But man, if you're going 12 rounds against Navarrete, you will have withstood your share of damage, man. Like, you would almost want to find a way out if you start getting hit by as many punches as this guy is throwing round over round. But yeah, I'm gonna chalk it up to Conceicao's fighting spirit, his pride, his experience. I'm gonna say he goes the distance against Navarrete. So yeah, I'm taking the WBO junior lightweight champion Emanuel Navarrete to defeat Conceicao via kind of a 8 rounds to 4 to 9 rounds to 3-ish. I think you're going to get some varying scorecards, but a very comfortable decision win for Navarrete. Unless he just totally underestimates Conceicao, which is true. Maybe this is a fight that he doesn't take as seriously as he did the Oscar Valdez fight. And if he doesn't take it seriously, he's going to look a lot more plodding and like he's in mud, and he's not going to be as agile and be able to move and advance and change. He's not going to be able to implement his game plan as well. Like he looked a little bit in mud against Eduardo Baez, but I feel like even if he's not at his absolute best, he's going to start picking it up in the middle rounds. Even if he looks a little bit slow to get out the gate in the early rounds. Sometimes it takes him a couple rounds to get going. Again, it did not take him any time to get going against Oscar Valdez. But yeah, I'm taking Navarrete via decision. Let me know what you think about this one. And by the way, this one is on the Shakur Stevenson versus Edwin De Los Santos undercard. I just did a Stevenson versus De Los Santos preview. Check that out when you have a chance. And yeah, let me know what you think about this one between Navarrete and Conceicao. And let's say Navarrete wins this one. Where does he go from here? The 130-pound division is heating up and it's getting very interesting. You just had that very competitive, close win for Joe Cordina against Eduardo Vasquez. Very close, somewhat controversial decision. Could have gone either way. I thought that Cordina probably banked enough for the early rounds to win it. And then you had the outstanding fight between O'Shaquie Foster and Rocky Hernandez, where Foster was down on the scorecards. Like going into the 12th round, he ended up scoring by the way, that 11th round in that fight is one of the rounds of the year between Foster and Rocky Hernandez. Check that out if you haven't. But O'Shaquie Foster, the WBC 130-pound champion, ended up knocking Rocky Hernandez out in the 12th round in a fight that even as it was stopped, Foster was down on the scorecards. So dramatic fight, very good fight. And then you've got Hector Luis Garcia, who's going to be fighting Lamont Roach on the last Showtime card towards the end of December. So let's say Navarrete gets past Conceicao. Let me know what you think is next for him. Are they going to try to unify with another 130-pound champion, whether you're talking Cordina, O'Shaquie Foster, or Hector Garcia, assuming Garcia beats Lamont Roach? Or Are they going to find somebody else within top rank stable to put against Navarrete? Conceicao often fights at top rank. His last opponent, Oscar Valdez, fights on top rank. He's been fighting a lot of top rank guys, Joet Gonzalez and so forth. I've got a potential scenario, hear me out here, that I think is very possible for Navarrete's next fight if he does beat Robson Conceicao. I think that there's a chance if Shakur Stevenson gets by Edwin De Los Santos and he cannot secure a fight with Vasily Lomachenko, who I think is probably going to be fighting, and this is just based on kind of preliminary reporting that I've heard from it wasn't Keith Idec, it might have been Donovan from Boxing Scene. It could have been him. It could have been Chris Mannix as well when he was talking with Donovan. But it looks like they're going to try to set up a vacant, I think, IBF title fight if and when Devin Haney gets stripped by the IBF. But that would be between Vasily Lomachenko and George Kambosos. So depending on how all that plays out. But if Shakur Stevenson wins here and cannot get a fight with somebody like Vasily Lomachenko, or Devin Haney doesn't come back down, or they can't set anything up between him and Gervonta Tank Davis, if there's nothing big in the immediate future for Shakur Stevenson, I could see them setting up Shakur Stevenson versus Emanuel Navarrete coming up from 130 to 135, because Navarrete at this point is already a 3-division champion. Think about how they could sell that one between Shakur Stevenson stylistically and Navarrete. I think that that's kind of like a possibility after this one between Navarrete and Conceicao. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for bearing with me if you've listened to my voice thus far. I'll get better soon, But yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.